Hello, everyone, and welcome to an episode of the Dairy Signal. If you're joining live, feel free to join the discussion, lean in, ask questions as you have fellow dairy farmers here sharing their experiences on all things calves. For those that are listening to the recording, regardless if you're getting some windshield time or watching the video, by all means, send your questions in and we'll make sure that they get to the producers at a later time. All of this is made possible, the Dairy Signal, and a lot of the educational content that you see throughout the calendar year put on by professional dairy producers by our national sponsors. So again, thank you. Thank you to our partners for not only making this program possible, but a lot of what you see executed throughout the calendar year. You can also see what's happening coming down the pike, coming either in person or next week's lineup of the Dairy Signal. You can check that out on our website at pdpw.org. So I encourage you to always check what's fresh and what's new on our website. Without further ado, I do want to hand it off because I'm always excited about these kind of topics when you get to rub elbows, if you will, with fellow calf gurus. And today we're really leaning in and leveraging the concept of small changes that matter. It's the little things that made the biggest impact that you might think are like no brainer or, okay, let's talk about this more. How did that change? What kind of tweaks were made? And so we have folks from here in the Midwest, here in Wisconsin, experts in their own right. So I'll let them introduce themselves a little bit further, but we have Jim Van Patter, who is the dairy manager with Neal's Brothers Farms. And we have Sherry Arnold, with the co-owner with Bussey's Barren Acres. So welcome you guys. Thank you for your time. But before we really kind of go into those little things that have big impacts, I'll ask you to further introduce yourselves. Let's take it further than that elevator introduction, but tell us about yourself and give us a little bit of an imagery or snapshot of your operation.
You want to go first, Sherry? I'll let you go first.
Yep. Okay. Hi, my name's Sherry Arnold. I'm one of the partners here at Bussey's Barren Acres. We operate a calf nursery located in Barren, Wisconsin. We're raising calves for about 22 different dairies right now. We're going to average by the end of the year about 17,000 calves through the system. We raise all our calves in huts and we feed twice a day. We've been in business for about 25 years now.
And to clarify, Sherry, because you've seen a thing or two throughout the years, you've been custom raising calves for about 25 years, or you've been in this space for that long?
So I actually came back to the farm in 1983 after graduating from River Falls in Superior with a degree. And then we were milking cows at the time. So in 1999, we sold the milk cows and started raising heifer calves. So we've been doing the custom calf nursery for about 25 years.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And Jim.
Jim Van Patter, Neal's Brothers Farms in Juneau, Wisconsin. We milk about 2,400 cows here and raise all our own stock. Usually right around 1,400 calves, heifer calves a year are raised here on the farm. In hutches and then into super hutches and then into group pens, outside lots with fence line feeders in our heifer operation. So, yeah, we think we do a pretty good job. We try to do the best we can, and our goal is to have the best calves anybody in the world has. So we've made several changes in the last 8 years, which we'll get into, I'm sure, as we go along here. But so yeah, about 1,400 heifer calves raised. Nothing like Sherry's got. I wouldn't want to have 17,000. That's crazy. But yeah, and we have a different philosophy. Anybody that's in, I'm not trying to raise my calves the cheapest. I'm trying to raise them the best. So we'll invest things into them and get return down the road. That's the way we look at it. So
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that. I think maybe for today's discussion, let's maybe bucket the discussion, kind of go through the flow, maybe a little bit of the SOPs, but let's start with newborn care because both of you are getting, obviously, James, you're going to be working with calves that are born right there on site and working from there. And Sherry, you're kind of getting them at different stages of the life cycle. So let's talk about when you first work with that calf. Like what have been some of the most successful either tips or protocols that you're like in the long run, this has truly paid off for you. So let's really focus on that young or newborn calf for a moment.
So I'll start. Our calves come here either once a week from the dairies they're coming from, or we've got a dairy that we pick up every day. Our goal is to get a healthy calf on site. So we don't have control sometimes over that first 24 hours or even the first few days of life. But I think our goal is to get it here as quickly as possible. Our trailers are sent out clean every morning. Our driver goes out. We try and get the route done as fast as we can. And then when we get to the farm, we get them unloaded, weighed and unloaded and vaccinated and into their huts. So I think once again, what our focus is what's the easiest on that calf? How do we get her here quickly? Try not to overload the trailer. Try and make sure the routes are efficient. The guys are helping on the other end load them, so we're not spending, a lot of time at the dairy picking up 15, 20 calves. So just little things, just looking out for the best welfare of that calf when she gets here. When she gets here, she goes into a hut. Those huts have all been washed and relocated to a new piece of ground. We try not to put calves back in the same spot for about 12 months if possible. So it takes a little ground here at Bussey's to keep them moving. All of them go on a sod-based, grass-based area. And so that's a little different than, some other people because they've got like a calf area, but we're able to move them around on our place. And I think that's an advantage.
Okay, so just to backpedal a moment here, when you were talking about the transportation element and you're talking about efficiencies, are you talking about like mapping out your pickup route to alleviate or minimize the amount of time on a trailer? When you're saying efficient, what fell in that bracket?
Yep, that's one thing, right? So if you've got 5 people located in an area, to pick them up efficiently, you're not driving all over the state. And we want to minimize the amount of time on that trailer. Some loads we have to go right to the dairy and back, right? They're full. We can't spend any extra time. They're already. So we try and be efficient with our trailer, make sure it goes out in the morning. It's back here by 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That calf has time to kind of get off the trailer, get fed and settle in for the night.
So top of mind, I mean, we were all offline here. We were talking about the heats or the extremes of all the seasons that come, especially here in the Midwest, you can get in one day. Are there some things that you do when it's extremely hot or even on the flip side, extremely cold that kind of helps transition them?
So hot days, the trailer is really vented well. Make sure everything's open. Make sure we don't overcrowd it, just good airflow going in there. It's when the trailer stops that they get hot. So if we're at a dairy picking up calves, having somebody help us load so we get back on the road quickly, just little things like that. Winter is a whole nother ball game, right? Last winter challenged all of us here. We went 50 below that one morning and we stayed below zero for about 16 days in a row. So we're looking at some different options coming up this winter. What can we do? We've been talking about maybe a heater in the trailer, heat in the floor, just different things to maybe alleviate the cold stress. Once again, though, it's minimal time on the trailer. Get there, get back, get them unloaded.
So when they arrive, like, do you have like a transition phase or period, or like once they get there, you give them kind of a day and then you expect them to be at a certain activity rate, or like what's your transition phase once they arrive to your location?
So everything goes right directly to their hut. We don't have a transition barn. So offloaded off the trailer into their hut. Last winter, we used doors on everything coming in. So we'd get them fed, put the doors on, make sure they were secure for the night. They couldn't fall out. The doors, we're going to try a little different plan this winter and have 3 days for doors, right? Have enough doors so that we can make them stay on for 3 days. Because they're not very smart the first couple of days of learning how to go back in the hut. You're training them to go back in, basically, and to come out to eat. So just we're always learning. What worked last year may not work next year. And winters, summers, they all present challenges. So I'd say we're always learning something different. They're teaching us all the time.
And in that transition phase, and again, I'm speaking specifically on the when they arrive to you transition phase, do you feed them a little bit different to help adjust, or is it really just the environmental controls that you help transition?
So once they get off the trailer, they get fed pretty much immediately. And we were trying to do a combination of buckets and bottles and to see who, could go on a pail. But for the last year, we just said, nope, we're going to bottle feed everything for about the first 3 to 4 days, just get them acclimated, teach them how to do that. And then once they've settled in, then we're trying to sort out who can go on a bucket and who stays on a bottle. So we're giving them a little more time to settle in here and figure out who they are.
Very interesting. Thank you, Sherry.
Yeah.
Let's shift to a different style now. So Jim, again, everybody's born and raised on your location. So let's start from the very beginning, from basically day one. What are some of those protocols or kind of tips and tricks that you've learned that really help them get off to that good start?
Well, the biggest thing with any calf operation is the colostrum they get right away. And that's, Sherry's got a big disadvantage. She's got calves coming from all over the place and she doesn't control that. Or I have really good control over that. So we have a 24-hour manned maternity. As soon as a calf is born and processed, within 45 minutes, she gets 3 liters of colostrum. Uh, High quality colostrum that's over 25 bricks. We tube feed all the calves, all the heifer calves. Um, Actually, we tube feed all the beef calves as well too. But so they get 3 liters of colostrum. When they get their ear tags, they get their horns taken care of. They get pasted, and then we just let them sleep for a while, and then about 6 to 8 hours later, we come back and feed 2 more liters of colostrum, and then we'll take the tape off over the horns we pasted, clean them off with an alcohol pad, and let the calf rest. Our calves go to our calf facility, which is about a half a mile down the road. Every morning, the guys come down and pick up all the calves that were born in the last 24 hours. Heifer calves go into the individual hutches. The beef calves, we have a group of super hutches that we put them in, and they're picked up 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So getting colostrum into them right away, within an hour. My rule is 45 minutes, and we're pretty good at that. And we test all our calves, so we total protein everybody, and we usually run 90% over 6.2. Hardly ever get a calf that doesn't do like a 5.5. Once in a while you get one because calves aren't machines, but we test every heifer calf every week, and our guys, especially maternity guys, how do we go every week? They want that sheet and they want to see they did well. So in any calf's life, that's the most important thing, the colostrum. So quick, clean, and good quality colostrum into that calf is what's going to protect her for the first 20 days of her life, because calves, as we know, are born without any immunity and very susceptible to a lot of issues that can really kill your calf operation.
Let's talk about the colostrum for a moment. Are you collecting and freezing on site? Are you buying it in? How do you manage the colostrum quantity?
We milk the cow within an hour of birth, so usually within 30 minutes. We'll let the cow have the calf, let her rest for a few minutes, and then bring her up to a chute. We collect the colostrum with a portable milker, test the colostrum, and then bag it. So we use the Dairy Tech bags, the 3 liters and the 2 liter bags. We used to feed 4 liters, but we found some calves that aren't quite big enough. It's a little too much for them. So we went to 3 and 2 probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
And our total proteins never changed. So that's what we do. And if you get a calf that's a little smaller, the guys know, if it's a preemie or it should only weigh 70 pounds, they'll just give it 2 instead of 3 liters. So
Sure.
we feed it fresh. We bag it, test it. It's kept in a fridge. We cool it down in water with ice in it to cool it down quickly. And we're feeding it within a day or two at the most. Most calves don't get their own dams colostrum.
Sure.
But like I said, we test all the colostrum's tested, and the heifers only get 25 and above on the colostrum they're fed. The lower quality stuff would go into the beef calves.
Okay. Very neat. Very, very, very cool. Thank you. I had another question and it escaped me, so apologize up front if we end up bouncing back into that. Has there been anything on the newborn side, I mean, yes, colostrum is one of the key. Clean, quality. I mean, those five C's come into play real fast here. Is there anything else on that newborn side there? Like this really helps them get off to the best start.
And we use Enforce and Tri-Shield with them as well. We've done that for Enforce for a long, long time, and the Tri-Shield we've used for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years now. So they get that before they get their milk actually. And then, when their first manure is green, they got the product, and
Yep.
so we do that. That's part of the calf processing. Um, and then when the calves go down to the calf area, one thing we started a little over a year ago, feeding colostrum replacer or transition milk to the calves the first 14 days. So we feed 25 grams of the SCCL product that we get from Alta Genetics
Mhm.
3 times a day for 14 days. And that's given us our last big boost in our calf program. So we went from like a 2.15 to 2.4 daily gain on the calves since we started that. And you see a decrease in scours and definitely a decrease in pneumonia calves with using that product. So that's probably the newest thing we've done. And, it's kind of colostrum related, but it's feeding that colostrum for 14 days, and it's really made a big difference. I'm really impressed with how it's gone.
Awesome. So both of you guys had talked about that once they get from either the maternity pen or get on site, they're being placed in huts. Let's talk about your hut placement as far as the seasonalities. I mean, that when you talk about little changes, little tweaks, big impact, let's talk about how you face your hutches real quick to kind of match the seasons.
I'll go first, Sherry. So in the summertime, we face our hutches north. So the openings for the north usually start at about mid-April through about into September. In the other seasons, we face them to the south, so they get more direct sun. It's nothing like going down to the calves in a sunny February day, and they're all laying in the front of their hutch, soaking in the sun. So we do that. We also, in the summertime, we also bed all the hutches with sand. So we'll start them on straw for the first week or so, and then just put the sand over the top and then bed with sand. Sand tends to keep them cooler. It doesn't block the vents in the hutches. Like straw will sometimes block the back vents in the hutches. We got the bottom vents in all our hutches. And it kind of keeps the flies down a little bit or two. So those are some things we do to keep the calves cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter, of course.
For the sand in the summer, how often or is it a one-time bedding of sand or do you put some fresh stuff in there once a week? Talk about the management of the sand real quick.
Um, Sand is put in twice a week or as needed, usually twice a week. Um, we just guys go by with a skid steer and a couple of guys shovel, throw in a few shovels full. And like I said, we start them on straw. We did used to start them just on sand, but I thought the younger calves would benefit from that, a week or 10 days of having the nesting ability. Because, even in the summertime, you get some chilly mornings or, September time. So you want to keep that baby calf warm. So we went to doing that a couple of years ago, starting them with straw and then just throwing the sand on top and then bedding them. They're bedded twice a week normally. If we get a lot of rain or something, we might have to bed them a little more often, but twice a week is normal.
I've had the privilege of walking your calves, Jim. You have very nice, very clean calves too. So it's definitely working in your favor.
Yeah, thanks.
Sherry, explain some of the tweaks that you make throughout the seasons with your hut
So
placement.
summer, we face everything to the east. That gives us a real advantage so that when that summer sun gets hot up in the sky, they can lay on the east side of that hut and get out into the shade. And you'll find a lot of them laying out there in the shade in the afternoon. So that helps. We bed with sawdust year round. So they're on sawdust year round. Then during the winter, we face everything. About October 1st, we start turning everything to the south. And we'll put sawdust down again on the bottom, but then we start adding straw on top of it. So we use a combination in the winter and just the sawdust in the summer. We have to bed as needed. Like right now, we've got rain 4 days out of 4, so we're bedding pretty much all the time.
Mhm.
One of the nice things we added about 3 years ago is we were hand bedding all of those huts out there, taking a trailer, trying to throw it over the wire with a shovel. We could spend all day not getting anywhere doing that. And then we weren't getting bedding all the way to the back of the huts either. So it would land in front of the door or just outside the door. So we bought a Triolet mixer and we've attached like a blower unit to it. So we take the hose and we just kind of blow it into the hut and go along, and just that thing runs all day, pretty much every day of the week, bedding huts and trying to keep them dry. But our employees love it. When it breaks down and they have to go back to the shovel, we know about it there, and I don't blame them. It's a lot of shoveling. So, and then in the wintertime, we use that same unit to blow the straw in over top of them and keep them dry. So we're thinking of adding a second bedder just to keep up with the 3,000 huts out there. It can be a struggle even keeping that one guy going. And so we're thinking of adding a second one, but we really like that part. That's been a huge advantage to getting rid of the shovel and trying to keep them dry. So hut management is key, keeping them in the right direction for us. We also get the added benefit that most of the storms come out of the west here. So if we face them to the east, we don't have them flying quite as much as we do if they're facing south. So little bonus.
Not too many Dorothys. That's good. That's very good. That is key. Thank you. Before we go into more of like rearing that calf, let's talk real quick about your team. I mean, you're handling a lot of calves. This isn't just a one-man band, but regardless, the people interacting with your calves are just crucial. It takes a special person. Let's talk about the kind of training real quick, or like how you select the right person for your team. What went into those thoughts or training for your calf care team?
At Nails Brothers, we have 6 guys that work with the calves. We feed 3 times a day, so we have a couple guys that come in about 10:30 a.m. and they do the 9 o'clock p.m. feeding. The other 4 guys come in at about 4:30 and do the 5 o'clock feeding and take care of the calves. We try to keep those guys a long time. I think 3 of them have been with us for 6+ years. Um, that makes a difference, and you got to find the right guys that um, want to work with calves. Actually, I'd rather have women working with my calves, but because they got a little more maternal instincts. But uh, the guys do a really good job. They work in all kinds of weather.
Mhm.
Hutches are great for calves. They're not great for people. So we pay our guys pretty well, and because it's a tough job, and they're doing it 365 and 100-degree weather we didn't quite get 50 below this year, Sherry, but 30 below down here. Yeah, so
Yeah.
you got
It's
to
still
give those
cold.
guys a pat in the back, and we make sure they're geared up with rain gear and all kinds of stuff. So um, training them, we have a calf maternity meeting with our vet team every 6 weeks, and we also take our guys to some of your training and some of the vet training and some of the UW extension stuff as well, just to expose them to the other guys that are doing the same thing they're doing. Um, but yeah, I mean those guys are gold. I mean they work with those calves every day, and we tend to. They tend to over-treat scours. We use electrolytes on any calf that gets loose is getting electrolytes, which is I'm fine with spending a little extra electrolytes to not have a problem. I also think in the heat we feed blue light in the water. Anytime it's going to be over 80 degrees, they get blue light in all the drinking water. And we also one other thing we do with the water. We feed warm water year round. So we put in a bulk tank and a boiler and we pump the water out at 103 degrees. So in the wintertime, they're not drinking cold water and using energy to heat that water up. And we just leave it at year round that way. So that helps increase intakes and keep the cows warmer in the wintertime.
And in the summer, do you have how do I say the same consumption or even maybe increased consumption in the
Yeah, we
summer for
have
water?
increased consumption. Yeah, because we'll water more often.
Mhm.
We went to what I call the 3 pail system. So we have a water pail on one corner of the wire in front and a grain pail in the other corner, and the milk pail's in the middle.
Mm.
Um, Technically, if I had my way, I'd feed everybody on bottles, but I don't. I just manage it, so I don't get the right to check. So I feel that bottle feeding would give you, bottles and nipples can get cleaned every time you feed.
Mhm.
Milk pail gets cleaned if, calf defecates in it or it rains a bunch in it or something. So
Mhm.
um, I think the performance we get, we do feed a group of calves. I have a few calves at a dairy, and they're all bottle fed. So um, I think bottles are the way to go. But I understand when you're feeding a lot of calves, that's a lot of work. You got to be set up for it. So.
Absolutely. Sherry, what about your team? What have you found worked as far as the people side, managing the calves? What's worked really well for you?
So our team is a mixture of men and women. I like having the women on my milk feeding crew. They're nurturing. They seem to have the patience a little more to manage some of these calves that can be a little stubborn. Um, for a while, we were all women, but once again, it's hard to find enough staff to feed this many. So, and the men seem to be a little, they're a little stronger. Sometimes they can handle some of the tougher jobs that
Mm.
we can't do. So that's been kind of nice. We try to have quarterly meetings with our employees, bring in a translator to help with the language barrier because a lot of my employees are Spanish speaking. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges we have is, communicating in a different language. So we try and always make sure we have an interpreter and they can ask the questions then and feel comfortable talking in a meeting and stuff. Yeah, we've got a staff of about 45 people here trying to manage all these calves. So it's a lot of people.
Mhm.
Yep. Sometimes I feel like I'm doing more people management than calf feeding, but that's part of the job and I'm glad to have them.
Absolutely. Especially when you have a good team, it makes it more,
Yep.
all more worth it. Doesn't seem the right saying, but I think you understand what I'm trying to articulate.
They're very valuable. We can't do it without them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if you don't mind, let's pivot. And actually, James, you are helping us lead us into it. The next minute, let's look at the feed efficiency or maximizing that growth. So let's start with grain intake. What have been some things along the way, or like what are some of your goals when you look at grain or just overall feed intake for your calves? When do you start? What's some of those protocols, tips and tricks along the way?
Okay. We've raised our protein content over the last, since 2018, we were feeding 18%, then we went 20, and we've been 22% on our starter, probably for 4 or 5 years now. We don't change. They stay on that same starter, through weaning and actually through, the first 3 weeks after weaning when they go to group pens, they're on the same grain mix. At that point, we introduce those calves to a TMR. And by the time they're moved at 120 days, they're pretty much just all on a TMR ration.
So
Um,
real quick on your grain, is it a textured? Is it got molasses? Is it a,
yeah, it's
just
a
a full pellet?
textured.
Okay.
Yeah, it's textured with molasses and yeah.
Okay.
Um, yeah, it's a Purina product that we feed actually. So,
Okay.
and we offer them. They get offered grain day one. We put it a little bit in the pail right away, and by the time they're weaned, they're eating, you know, 7, 8 pounds a day. Um, a lot of, the grain pail's pretty much full, and they'll eat it up. So, we want to give them all they can eat because we want to grow them to
Mhm.
their genetic potential. So we don't limit anybody. If they're eating that, they're going to get more. The guys will usually do grain a couple times a day. Um, and, and then of course, if we get rain or something, we'll dump them all out and that'll go to the bigger heifers will eat that up. But, so that's what we do with our grain feeding program.
So then as far as introducing the TMR, was it just like overnight that you start putting it in there? Is it kind of like a handful when they get to a certain age? How do you transition into
When
the
they
TMR?
when they move to the group pens, so we wean them at 70 days and we move about 75 to 80. We usually try to move calves 30 at a time. Uh,
Mhm.
so in the group pens, there's two bunks, they're little bunks that go on the front of the super
Mhm.
hutches. We'll put TMR on one and grain on the other one. Um, some of those calves actually go to pens in one of the old barns we have, and they'll get a pile of TMR and a pile of grain the first week, and then the second week we'll put the grain on top of the TMR. Uh, so there's about a 3 week transition where they're exposed to TMR before they move to the next group where they're pretty much all TMR. They still get a couple pounds in that first group for a little while, but by the time they're 130 days old, they're just on TMR, 100%.
Okay. Very cool. Sherry, what have you learned along the way? Let's talk about your grain protocol. I know you've had some cool shakeups the last couple of years. Let's talk about that.
Some cool shakeups. It started about a year ago, just looking at rate of gains and what we could do to do something different. And what we decided to do is take a look at the whole program, start to finish, right? And one of the questions was, is your TMR mixing properly? That was the question asked. Well, and somebody said, well, in order to answer that question, you need to do a TMR audit. So that kind of got a ball rolling that we never expected. We've talked about this, but the question was, is it mixing correctly? And yes, the answer was yes. But when the person came out to do the TMR audit, he goes, well, why aren't you mixing individual batches of feed for your wean calves? And we're like, I don't know. We never asked that question. What we were doing was starter feed down on a wean calf, same one they were getting in the huts. And then we'd slowly start adding or trickling a little TMR to the top of that, and then calves would have access to both. Well, what we were finding is that I like the TMR, you like the pellet. The guy that came up third didn't get anything because it was gone. And so what we implemented is kind of a 4-stage program where when they are weaned, they come in and they get the starter feed. And for the first week, that's all they're offered. Week 2, the ration is going to be mixed in the TMR. It's going to be mostly starter feed, but a little bit of TMR. So they'll be on that for another week. And the third week is the same thing. By the time they get to the 4th week, it's a full TMR. And it's eliminated that sorting, and the calves are always getting the same mouthful. And we're seeing just rate of gain increase, uniform calves going out. We just never even thought of it before. It didn't even occur to us that was an option. So that's been a real eye opener for us, is being able to mix those individual batches based on how many days post weaning they are, and really keeping it consistent. It didn't cost us any more. It took a little more labor because instead of mixing one load, we're mixing 4 different batches, but in the end, it's paid off.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about some of those other findings. Let's talk about, we had talked in the past, I don't know if everybody else is entitled to that conversation, as far as some of those fiber findings, those aha moments of ingredients you already had, but the way that it was reprocessed to repurpose.
Yeah, I'm not probably the best person to answer all those questions because I know what goes in there. But once again, we've had to learn about the length of the haylage being cut, a little longer for these calves, a little shorter for some of the things, and length has been one of the things that we've looked at, is increasing the length of the cut. We also leave our haylage or our alfalfa go a little bit longer, just kind of to bloom stage, where everybody else is looking for that first total. Yep. And ours, everybody's like, why aren't you cutting? But we actually want it a little age on ours, to slow down so they can't digest it as fast. So our haylage looks a little different than if we're feeding a dairy cow. It's not just grab what's off the pile. So that's been a change for us. I don't handle a lot of that. My partner Micah does a lot of the nutrition work and stuff, and so I know what's in there, but I do know those 2 things. One of the other things that we kind of changed, and it's a work in progress, is that we've added feed bowls for the first 2 weeks of life for our calves. Calves have changed in the last 5 years. We're looking at almost 80% of our heifer calves coming from first calf heifers, and they're smaller and they're not quite as tough as those calves coming out of mature cows. So they were struggling to reach the bottom of the feed bucket. So we've added feed bowls to just give them easy access for the first couple weeks. We're learning how to manage feed bowls. I'm not saying it's perfect because they like to flip them out and picking them up, but we're definitely seeing them eat faster and find it faster. So that's been one of the changes we're working on.
Awesome. And maybe this is more on your grain intake. Correct me if I'm wrong. You guys were grinding up your corn all the way through to even get the cob for additional fiber. Was that in your grain or is that in your TMR?
We were using a cob to get some additional fiber. We did it for about 6 months and weren't finding the results that we wanted. So we kind of went back to 22% starter, kind of went back to the beginning and said, yep, we need to go back to where we were at, and finding that if we get good intake in the huts and then we're using the kind of the total mixed ration in the barn, we're getting really good feed consumption all the way through. We're really loving that program. So tweaking it all the time. We're always tweaking it.
Thankfully, our calves just kind of walk with us. They're like,
Yeah.
all right, along for the ride, as long as it's not too harsh of a tweak, right?
Well, the question always is, here's what's best for the calf. And sometimes that changes.
And being able to nimble and have the team to be able to be nimble with it too is important.
Yep.
Very
Not get
nice.
stuck on what you did yesterday.
Yes. Yes. We love consistency and dot.
Yeah. What's best for the calf?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. So we talked about grain. All right. We talked about hut placement. Let's go back to the obvious discussion of milk intake. Talk through not only your feeding process, but if you're doing powder versus the classic discussion, powder versus whole milk, how you handle it, what's either your ramp up process, your weaning process. Let's just stay in the space for a moment on milk feeding.
Okay, I can take that first. So the first 2 weeks of life, we feed 2.5 liters 3 times a day, with the colostrum added to that. Day 15 through day 56, we feed 56 or to day 56, we feed 3 liters 3 times a day with a balancer added to that. It's pasteurized whole milk is what we feed. My belief is whole milk works the best. I'm not a big powder fan, but I've seen powders not do what they're supposed to do, or not always have in them what they say they have in them. So day 57 to day 63, we cut the calves to 2 liters twice a day, or 3 times a day, excuse me. And then day 64 to day 70, they go to 1 liter 3 times a day. And at day 71, they're weaned. And then, like I said, we usually move them out of the hutch to the group pens, either 75 to 80 days old. That's how we handle our milk feeding. So it's all pasteurized whole milk from the dairy.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we're obviously doing something way different. Yeah, we don't have access to whole milk, so that changes things drastically. We feed all milk replacer here. We're feeding a 24-22. We feed the same amount all the way through. We feed milk for 60 days. So they get 8 ounces of powder, 60 days, twice a day. We supplement that with a product called Smart Start. It's made by Strauss. It's a protein plasma for the first 2 weeks of life. So they're getting 1.5 ounces added to their milk replacer for the first. And that's just going after gut health, right? And some extra antibodies in there. And we've been using that.
Okay, I was going to say, how long have you been doing that?
For about 25 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a long time. So what we discovered with the Smart Start is it helped post scours, right? It helped calves kind of work their way through scours. We really liked how it worked, and we're like, well, if it helps them after scours, why not try and put it in and prevent scours? And we really felt we saw a big difference, and we've never looked back. So we've always added the Smart Start. And I think that's going to be very similar to feeding the colostrum for 14 days, right? You're just adding some plasma to that. You're adding some antibodies to that calf and giving them some extra. We stick with the 8 ounces of powder. Our philosophy has been, and this has not changed either, to develop the rumen, right? We want that calf at day 60 to have a full rumen so that when she hits the calf barn, she's able to digest feed and use it. So we don't really push the milk, we push grain. We're pushing grain all the time. Feed consumption is our number one driver here. So yeah, it's pretty simple. They go on 8 ounces of powder and they stay there till they're weaned at day 60. Calves are weaned into the barn about day 62.
What does your weaning process look like?
It's a hard wean on milk, off milk. Yep.
Oh,
We've done
almost
it
like night and day, or what do you
multiple,
mean?
all on the same day. We've done kind of the transition where you say, oh, we're going to step them down, we're going to take them off milk, we're going to give them time to adjust in the hut. We found kind of a mixed bag. We stressed them out in the hut, and then we stressed them out when we moved them in the barn. We found that it was almost easier to just say, oh, we're going to do that one kind of major event and let them work their way through it. And we've had better luck doing that than trying to step them down. They just seemed like all the steps down added another stress, and then they were stressed out from the next step. So we just said, all right, you're going to the barn. And we've been doing that probably for 15 years that way. And
Oh, okay.
yeah, I know it goes against convention,
If
but
it works.
we're weaning 400 to 500 calves a week. So yeah, we're moving them through.
Okay. They're singing at you for a couple of days, but
They
okay.
sing at you no matter what. They do not like being out of the huts. Even if they're fully weaned, they're going to tell you about it. They don't. It's like going from the Ritz to, counter service and ordering your own food. They are not going to like it.
Quite the analogy. I appreciate that, Sherry.
That's the way I look at it, right? I got everything brought to me, and all of a sudden you're going to make me go find everything. And that's what it is when you move them.
Awesome. So one more segment that I wish to approach today yet, and this is a great segue, is elements of stress. A lot of times you'll see those diseases pop in and out. So how do you manage or do your health screenings? What are things along the way that have really helped you either eliminate or avoid, more on the prevent side, or when you need to treat? Like, what are some of those tips and tricks along the way again?
I can go first on that one. So one thing we've implemented a couple of years ago, we lung score all our calves.
Okay.
And you would think in hutches you wouldn't have calves with lung scores, but I was shocked to find out we had, depending on the weather, 25, 30% sometimes had a lung score of a 1 or a 2. So we
And
score
when are you lung scoring?
4 weeks and 6 weeks.
4 and 6.
So if they have a lung score, they get a treatment right away, and then everybody gets followed up again 2 weeks later, and we run about 93% of those that had a lung score are better and have no lung score. Um, and another thing that's helped is we used to see pneumonia treatments having to do those when they went to the group pens. Since we've done the lung scores and treated those calves right away, we very seldom have to treat a calf when she goes to the group pens. Before, that's when it stressed them, and you were treating half the calves. So that's been a big improvement for us, and we see that in when we do heifer checks. When we're ultrasounding the heifers, I'll look at what was her daily gain. Oh, she grew 2.56, and she had a 0 lung score, and she's pregnant the first time. There's a big correlation between getting pregnant the first time and not getting pregnant to the second or third time by having a lung score or having a pneumonia treatment down the line. So it's interesting when you're preg checking heifers to look at those two numbers, and you see a calf that only gained 2 pounds and had a lung score of 2, and then maybe she had a lung score of 1, and then maybe she got treated again. They don't get pregnant as fast as those other calves. So
You're
um,
definitely, to your earlier comment, you're definitely seeing the upfront investment paying off in the long run.
yeah, I mean it's an investment. I mean it's a few $100s a week to do all those calves. But same thing with the colostrum is about a $26 investment. But if we can go from we've taken our calves from 1.7 to 2.4, and for every 100 pound or a tenth of a pound gain is 150 pounds of milk. So we're gaining almost 1,100 pounds of milk in that first lactation on those calves coming down the pike, and that transfers into the second and third lactation. So that's 215-ish dollars a year more milk production, even at a crappy milk price. So 1,400 calves, that's $300,000 of increased revenue. So I don't care. I'm not trying to raise my calves cheap. I'm going to put everything into them I can and get the results I want. That's what we're after. I'm feeding my own calves, so I'm different from Sherry's or some other big calf raisers that are feeding a lot of people's calves and got to have a margin on it. Like I said, I'll spend whatever to get the best calves I can get, and I'll get the return in the end. So that's the way we look at it.
Definitely maximizing your efficiencies. On your system, it definitely is working out, and you can track it all the way through, which is kind of a
Yeah,
powerful way to validate what you're doing too.
we have 5 weights on our calves by the time they're 6 months old, so we track that really close, and
Okay.
I'll make sure we get the daily gains that we're striving for. And to go from 1.7 to 2.4, I think that's pretty good. I mean, 10 years ago, you'd be really happy with 1.7, but we can do so much more with calves. I've been in the business for a long time. Uh, back in the 70s, a successful calf was one that lived. You know, now we have 1,400 calves and we had 12 dead calves in the hutches last year. So we're less than 1%. I think 0.07% death loss in our wet calves. And when I was in my 20s or even in my teens, we were, you lost a third of your calves because we were still trying to raise them in a barn. We finally got them in hutches back around 1980, and we didn't lose a calf for 2 years. If you keep them warm and dry and feed them, they do great. But we still tried to raise them in barns and with terrible air, and then we wonder why they didn't thrive. Well, it's pretty obvious now, but we've come a long ways in 50 years. But yeah, you get what you put into them. That's I guess that's my take home message. You got to invest some money in the front to get it out the back.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely. So Sherry, pivoting over to you.
So I think things that stress calf out, right? On arrival, vaccinating, dehorning, moving, any of those things are stressors. How do you minimize them? So we always think calves coming in, make sure that they've got a good, comfortable place to land, well bedded, right? So that they're warm, dry. I mean, that eliminates a lot of stress. When we dehorn, we always use some kind of pain medication. So
Okay.
lidocaine at the horn site. We also use aspirin in the milk for 24 hours to kind of control any residual pain that would come from that. We use aspirin after we vaccinate to kind of help with some of the symptoms that come from that, right? So we know that if we can control pain and stress, it just makes the calf more comfortable. If she's comfortable, she's healthier. So we try and do that. At weaning, we'll use medicators if we feel like calves are maybe coming down with something. We'll try and preemptive and use the medicators and maybe head off a big outbreak that way, right? We can run aspirin in the medicators if we feel like we see fevers. We use aspirin frequently around here to kind of control stress and pain. So it's a pretty easy way to get it into them too, right? Run it through the medicator without having to do a bunch of extra work. Just keeping calves clean and dry. I think that's the best way to keep stress off. Flies down, bedding. Yeah, what's best for the calf?
Absolutely.
It isn't really rocket science, right? It's just what would you be comfortable with, and a lot of times that same thing applies to them.
So as far as the health screenings, diagnosing that sick animal, are you doing stuff on the preventative it? Is it more visual cues, just having your team keyed up of this is a sick calf? How do you approach that?
We're in a big transition right now. We
Mhm.
started on the first week of May using the Sense Hub ear tags to monitor calf
Okay.
health. So we're about 60 days in. We're really learning the system. We say we've got a doctor in the house 24/7, 365 days a year now. It'll
Okay.
take us 5 months to be fully implemented because we're starting at new calves and working our way forward.
Mhm.
We're liking what we're seeing. We're getting daily readings on calves that don't meet their health score. So 85 and above, they kind of click along. We don't see them. If they fall below that, they end up on our screen. And then we're going out and physically checking those calves and deciding what the best thing is to do, protocols.
Mhm.
We're learning about what that means, right? Like a year from now, ask me the question, but we're pretty excited to have this in place because it's monitoring every calf 24/7, right? And it's telling us, is she moving? Is she eating? Just exactly what she's doing out there. And we found the more huts we've got, the harder it is to monitor all them, right? You can't physically walk them enough to have eyes on them. So we're hoping that helps us with the management of diagnosing. We're using a lot of electrolytes when we find these calves, keeping them hydrated and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's a big change for us. We're learning. We're really in the learning phase of this right now.
So have you seen treatment protocols being adjusted with this new technology, or are you still kind of, I don't want to call it winging it, but are you still adjusting?
We're adjusting. We're doing some different things. We're saying, okay, on arrival, this is our protocol. At day 10, day 14, when we know we typically could see scours, this is our protocol. So we're trying to dial into more of a set protocol versus your opinion, right? Because everyone has a different opinion and we were struggling with consistency. So we're hoping this provides us consistent, protocols in place for the age of the calf. Does that make sense? I mean, yeah.
I followed it. I followed it. No, all really cool things. And both Jim and Sherry, thank you guys for being very open, very candid, going with the flow of my squirrely thoughts. So what haven't I asked you yet? If I was out on your farm and I had your ear for a few moments, what would you be like, oh my gosh, Cassie, you didn't ask the most obvious thing. Have I left something out there yet?
I think one of the things when we went to 3 times a day feeding, we made that jump from that 1.7 average daily gain to around 2, and it's not easy for everybody to do that. It's labor intensive. Somebody has to feed calves at 9 o'clock at night, but that was an easy gain for us, I think. Probably one of our bigger gains. The second biggest gain would be the colostrum in the first 14 days, but just just a couple of guys, 2 guys for an hour and a half feeding calves. If I can pick up 0.3 of a pound, that's pretty impressive. I just think I just feel better about the calf if I'm feeding them every 8 hours, and and I'm not worried if that second 1 o'clock feeding, some of those younger calves don't drink all their milk. I'm not worried about it. It doesn't bother me. So I just want my goal is to have, like I said before, I want to have the best calves in the world. And I want to have the best. So if I have the best calves, I got a chance to have the best cows, and it follows through. So uh, that was probably a big thing. That wasn't really, a huge investment. It's a couple of extra hours of labor for my guys and just reorganize your team. So um, that was a big help to our calf operation. And we're always looking for the next thing. I think um, we're using Lactopro in the fresh cows now. It's a live bacteria to the rumen. We were talking about maybe they have a calf bolus as well, giving that to them about weaning time to fire up the bugs in the rumen. So when they go off of milk and they're full on a grain or a forage diet, that maybe progress a little longer. We haven't done that yet, but that's kind of the next thing. You're always looking at the next thing. And there's a lot of I'm on a board member of Dairy Calf and Heifer Association, and we have our conference every year. Next year it's in Sioux Falls in April, and there's always new stuff. I mean, just conference in Tucson, they talk about stuff to put on the calf's head to, kind of smells to calm them down, to relax them for travel and stuff. So there's always new changes coming down the pike and new finds, and there's, you keep learning, My mom always just said, if you're not learning, you're dying. So you got to keep learning. Even at my old age, I got to keep learning. So
Yes, the
try to
philosophy of green and growing.
yeah, yeah. So look at what's out there and give it a try. And if you get an increase that you can track, that's great. Um, so yeah, I think that's of all the things we've done, that was probably the easiest
Okay.
0.3 of a pound gain just by feeding them 3 times a day instead of twice a day.
Wow. What about you, Sherry? What are you itching to tell me that I might have forgotten to ask today?
I think calves keep you humble. Like they do. They're always challenging you. What worked yesterday may not work today. Today's calf is not the same calf as she was 20 years ago. I think that to me is the biggest takeaway. We've seen this first, we call it the curse of the firstborn, right? It's a challenge, and it's been a challenge for us, and we're learning to adapt to that new dairy calf. She has changed over the last few years, and with the beef calf cross, it's really pushed the value of that heifer calf up, where before they had abundant numbers and maybe she didn't matter as much. Now all of a sudden she's very important because they've got reduced heifer calves coming in, and the industry is changing, and to keep up it's been a struggle to just really stay current. And yep, we're learning. And I think that's the thing about calves. Whatever works here may not work for you. You just got to keep finding out what's best for your calf and what works for it. There's no one trick. There's no one way.
There's no silver bullet, is what you're telling me, Sherry.
There's none.
Dang it.
And she'll keep you humble if you think you got it.
Oh, too true. Too true. They keep you on your toes in some ways, the best ways, and some days not so much.
Not so much.
Yes, not so much. Well, with that, guys, thank you again. Thank you for your time. Thank you for really just opening the barn doors, so to speak, and bearing it all. I really appreciate the ability to lean in, ask you all these questions about your calves. I truly think of you guys experts in your own ways, not only from the amount of calves that you work with, but you've been around the block a time or two in a good way, experienced a thing or two and seen a thing or two, especially with the new swings and new directions we're seeing the industry pivot into. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. As we round out today's discussion for our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully we have you back here on another episode of the Dairy Signal. You can definitely catalog, you can go through and sift through topics, or just kind of stay along for the ride. So whatever works best for you as a listener. Again, thank you for tuning in to today's Dairy Signal. And again, special thank you, special shout out to our national sponsors who help make programs like the Dairy Signal possible. We definitely appreciate all the support you put into PDP, but in truth, by all the support you put behind fellow dairy farmers. So thank you. Thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.